Reborn on the day the prince divorced me. This time I was all smiles. In less than an hour, I left the prince's manor with 500 chests of dowry and all my household servants. Hello everyone. Welcome to Empress Revenge Stories. Now, let's begin this tale. A crisp sheet of paper brushed against my cheek, making a sharp rustling sound before spiraling down onto the blue brick floor. The ink was still wet, and the pungent scent of pine soot filled my nostrils, stinging my eyes. Lu Xue, this is your divorce decree. This prince's patience is limited. I give you 2 days to get out of the Su prince's manor. Tuoba Lai's cold, hard voice echoed through the main hall, dripping with undisguised contempt. He stood with his hands behind his back, not even sparing me a glance. The phoenix eyes that had once captivated me were now filled with tender pity for the frail, willow-like woman in his arms. I stood in the center of the hall, looking down at the divorce decree, black words on white paper, the strokes bold and forceful, just like the brushwork he had used to paint my brows by lamplight all those years ago. What a pity, the depth of feeling back then was a lie, and today's severance was the truth. A wave of nausea churned in my stomach, the lingering imprint of that cup of thousand mechanisms, poisoned wine I had drunk just before dying in my past life. When the poison took effect, my bones felt as if they were being snapped one by one. I collapsed on the cold floor of the side hall, watching Tuoba Lai hold by Yao Guang's hand, stepping step by step onto the highest throne, while the cries of my family's execution echoed all around. That moment of cold and despair, even Reborn, still clung to me like a festering wound. Sister, the prince was just angry in the moment. Hurry and apologize to him. As long as you can learn to tolerate Yao Guang, the position of principal consort will still be yours. Yao Guang clutched her handkerchief, her voice soft and fragile, half her body leaning against Tuoba Lai. Those watery, innocent eyes, however, hid undisguised provocation. She knew I was too proud to share a husband with anyone, least of all her, a lowly cousin. In my past life, I had done exactly as she wished. Not only did I refuse to apologize, I caused a huge scene. I cried about my hardships accompanying him on the battlefield, accused him of betrayal, and even tried to tear off Yao Guang's hypocritical mask. In the end, Tuoba Lai kicked me aside in disgust. I lost not only my dignity, but also my dowry, which he found various excuses to sell off and withhold within 2 days, turning it into funds for his military ambitions. But in this life, these tricks were nothing but the clumsy performances of clowns in my eyes. I took a deep breath, suppressing the surging hatred in my heart, and found the corners of my mouth lifting unbidden. This smile not only froze Yao Guang's sobbing, but even made the usually composed Tuoba Lai furrow his brow, eyeing me suspiciously. No need for 2 days. I crouched down, my fingertips tracing the rough surface of the paper, elegantly picking up the divorce decree and folding it carefully in front of them before tucking it into my sleeve. Since Prince Su is so eager to make room for your cousin, I, as your principal consort, naturally ought to help you achieve your wish. I looked up at Tuoba Lai, my eyes devoid of any lingering attachment, only the clarity of relief. 1 hour. In just 1 hour, Lu Xue, will have nothing more to do with the Su prince's manor. Lu Xue, what kind of playing hard to get game are you trying now? Tuoba Lai's voice dripped with mockery. He clearly didn't believe that the woman who had once walked through fire for a single word of his would let go so easily. Playing hard to get. I let out a light laugh and shook my head. Your Highness overestimates himself. Maji, come in. Maji, my personal maidservant waiting outside, hurried in. She had clearly overheard our conversation. Her eyes were red, but she stubbornly held her head high. Go give my orders, have all the servants from the Lu family go to the storehouses immediately and begin inventory. I pulled out a heavy bunch of keys from my bosom, the tokens of my authority over the manor's household. Follow the dowry list from when I was married. Carry out every single item. Anything bearing the Lu family mark, even a single shard of porcelain, must be taken. Yes, miss. Maji heard the finality in my voice and answered firmly, turning to leave. Tuoba Lai's face darkened instantly. It wasn't me he was reluctant to lose, it was the Lu family's incomparable wealth. Minister Lu Changzheng, the Minister of Works. might not have been prominent at court, but he controlled the empire's water conservancy and construction projects. Even a sliver of what passed through his hands was enough to smooth Tuoba Lai's path in the struggle for the throne. Lu Yingxue, have you had enough? Threatening me with your dowry, is this your upbringing? Tuoba Lai stepped forward, as if to snatch the keys from me. I sidestepped, my expression cold as ice. Has your highness forgotten the laws of Great Qi? A woman's dowry belongs to her natal family. In the event of a proper divorce, it must all be returned. That was a divorce decree, Your Highness, written clearly in black and white. Do you wish to go back on your word now and earn yourself a reputation for coveting your wife's dowry? This retort left Tuoba Lai speechless. Bai Yaoguang, seeing the tide turning against them, her eyes darting, began to weep again. Sister, Yaoguang doesn't care about these worldly possessions. As long as your highness has me in his heart, Yaoguang is content anywhere. Please don't hurt the prince's dignity over such things. Since Lady Bai is so magnanimous, I'm sure she wouldn't deign to use my familiar rosewood furniture or my case-eye silk screens. Nor would she covet my several chests of gold and antiques. I turned and gave her a raised eyebrow smile. That's good. Then, it would be awkward if, after I've emptied the main hall and side chambers, you had nowhere to sit. It would make me, as your older sister, seem cruel. Before they could react, the rear courtyard of the manor was already filled with the sound of bustling footsteps. The Liu family servants, all elites carefully selected by my father, had been sidelined and bullied in the prince's manor for years. Now, with my orders, they channeled all their pent-up energy into action. Faster! This pair of Xuanda incense burners is the madam's dowry, carry them out. This purple sandalwood dragon screen was specially procured by the minister, handle it with care. Carry these out. All 500 chests in the storeroom, every single one of them, must be moved. Get the carriages ready at the main gate. If anything blocks the way, shove it aside. Maji's voice was crisp and decisive as she directed dozens of servants through the various rooms. Tuoba Lai watched as the once luxuriously decorated main hall was stripped bare in a matter of moments. Even the ancient painting on the wall swiftly removed by the servants. He trembled with rage. Lu Yingxue, are you moving house or tearing down a manor? Your Highness, this painting was given to you by my father at your birthday banquet 3 years ago, to lend to you for viewing. Now that the marriage is dissolved, of course it must be returned to its rightful owner. I looked at the now bare wall and felt nothing but satisfaction. As for these tables and chairs, most of them are rare pieces from the Liu family collection. Since your highness does not care for my person, I imagine seeing my family's belongings would only bring you grief. I am sparing you the pain by taking them away. Bai Yaoguang, who had been leaning against Tuoba Lai, now watched helplessly as the precious items she had been eyeing for herself disappeared one by one. Her face turned whiter than paper. She couldn't resist grabbing a servant's sleeve. That green jade Rui, His Highness said it was for me. That servant, sent by my father, had a tough temper. He shook her off and grumbled. Lady Bai, the base of this Rui bears the Liu family mark. It's a treasure our master left for our young lady as part of her dowry. If you want one, tell Prince Su to go buy it from the Jade Pavilion himself. Snatching others' belongings is not the conduct of a proper lady. Bai Yaoguang was left speechless, tears streaming down her face, and turned to Tuoba Lai for help. Your Highness, Tuoba Lai was caught between a rock and a hard place. If he stopped me, he would confirm his reputation for greed. If he didn't, watching his fine manor being turned into an empty shell would be a blow to his pride. Lu Yingxue, don't go too far, he growled through gritted teeth. I ignored him and walked straight into the courtyard. The courtyard of the Su Prince's manor was now a scene of organized chaos. 500 large red-lacquered chests formed a long procession, stretching from the inner courtyard all the way to the main gate. These were the dowry my father had painstakingly prepared so I wouldn't be mistreated: gold and silver vessels, jewelry, rare books, and deeds to lands and properties. In my past life, I foolishly opened those chests one by one for Tuoba Lai's empty ambition, turning their treasures into stepping stones for his schemes. In this life, they were my capital, the foundation of my ability to protect my family. Miss, everything has been inventoried. Maji walked over, her forehead beaded with sweat, but her eyes burning bright. The family carriages are waiting at the gate, 50 wagons total, and our 300 servants are all ready to escort us. I nodded, then glanced at Tuobalai, whose face was dark and stormy as he stood under the corridor, and by Yaoguang, trembling beside him. Your Highness, the time is up. This manor is indeed spacious, but the feng shui leaves much to be desired. I hope you and your cousin will savor the quiet days ahead. I clapped my hands and walked toward the gate without looking back. Luing Xue, if you walk out that gate today, even if you kneel and beg me in the future, I won't give you a second glance. Tuobalai roared at my back, his voice carrying the last shreds of his pitiful pride. I paused briefly, but didn't turn around. I only uttered 2 words softly. Thank you. Thank you for the divorce decree. Thank you for your heartlessness. Thank you for letting me see this hell on earth before I had to drink that cup of poison. The moment I stepped out of the prince's manor, the sunlight was blinding. The long street was lined with curious onlookers. The news of the Prince of Su divorcing his wife was the biggest scandal in the capital. But instead of a weeping, discarded woman, they saw an endless procession of vermilion lacquered chests and over 300 Lu family servants. Lift the sedan. Maji's sharp command rang out. The first chest of dowry was hoisted with a dull, heavy thud. I sat in the spacious sedan chair of the Minister of Works, and through the thin curtain, I watched the plaque reading, Su Prince's Manor, grow smaller and smaller in my vision, until it blurred completely. At that moment, the urgent sound of hoofbeats drew near. The hoofbeats came closer and finally stopped abruptly beside my sedan chair, kicking up a cloud of dust. I lifted the curtain and saw Qin Zhong, the steward of the Su Prince's manor. He was drenched in sweat, nearly tripping as he dismounted. He scrambled to block the procession, his face pale as death. Prince, no. Miss Lu, you'll be the death of this old servant. Qin Zhong didn't even bother to wipe his sweat. Bowing repeatedly, the prince just came to his senses and sent this old servant to stop you. Some of the things in the storeroom are the manor's fixtures. You're taking everything, even rolling up the carpets from the main hall. What kind of chaos is this? Seeing his frantic, red-faced panic, I felt nothing but satisfaction. In my past life, when I managed the household, Qin Zhong, as the son of Tuoba Lai's wet nurse, had frequently tampered with the accounts, using my private funds to support his useless relatives. I had endured it for the sake of maintaining harmony. But those days were over. Steward Qin, you're mistaken. I released the curtain and leaned back against my cushion, speaking through the window with calm deliberation. The laws of Great Qi state that when a woman is divorced, all property belonging to her natal family, from large estates to the smallest needle and thread, must be returned in full. Which of those so-called fixtures you mention wasn't bought with Lu family money, or made by my father and sent to the manor? But surely there should be some handover procedure. How can everything be taken away in just an hour? Qin Zhong pleaded, trying to stall. Procedure. I laughed coldly. When Prince Su slapped the divorce decree in my face, he didn't mention any procedure. He told me to get out of his manor in 2 days. I'm leaving an hour early and doing it cleanly, and somehow that's my fault. Maji, tell them exactly what we've taken. Maji rode up from behind, holding a thick stack of ledgers, and slapped them against Qin Zhong's chest. Open your eyes and look. These are the official dowry records from when our young lady was married, complete with the seals and detailed measurements of every piece. Our young lady is being generous. Anything that originally belonged to the Su Prince's manor, worthless junk, we haven't touched. But anything marked with the Lu family character, or anything bought with our young lady's own money during her 2 years managing the household, we've taken every last bit. Qin Zhong was stunned, his eyes darting, clearly thinking of rushing back to incite Tuoba Lai to use official pressure. I saw through him and my voice turned icy cold. Steward Qin, if you feel this is unfair, please feel free to have Prince Su file a complaint with the Shuntian Prefecture. Tell them he wrote a divorce decree, and now regrets letting go of his former wife's 500 chests of dowry and wants to take them back to support his household. Let's see if the people of the capital laugh at the Lu family for moving out too fast, or at a prince for wanting to live off his wife's money. The onlookers, already whispering, burst into low laughter at the words, taking back the dowry, and living off his wife. Although Great Chi placed great importance on propriety, property laws heavily favored a woman's dowry. A man who tried to take his wife's dowry would be scorned for life, let alone a prince trying to seize power. Qin Zhong's face twitched, reddening and paling in turn, until he could only watch helplessly as Ma Ji waved her hand and the servants escorted the wagons forward. My gaze drifted blankly, but my mind churned with deeper schemes. In my past life, Tuoba Lai had spent lavishly to win over military officials. The Su prince's manor looked grand on the outside, but inside it was empty. Without the profits from the 13 salt and cloth shops the Lu family ran in Jiangnan, he couldn't even afford the gifts for the ministers. Bai Yaoguang had always thought the manor was wealthy, but after I was driven out and she took over the household, she was met with a bottomless pit of debts. In this life, without my money to prop him up, how would he feed the insatiable military leaders? How would he toast with the officials of the Ministry of Works? The carriage moved swiftly, and in less than half an hour, the two imposing stone lions of the Minister of Works mansion came into view. However, before the procession could come to a halt, the gates of the mansion burst open. I had expected the old steward to greet us, but the man leading the group wore the official robes of a second-rank minister, embroidered with a crane. His beard was flecked with gray. It was my father, Minister of Works Liu Changzheng. He was known in court for his calm and steady demeanor, but now his weathered face was a storm of fury. At his side, my elder brother Liu Yingyun, barely restrained, clutched an unsheathed sword, his eyes red. The servants I had sent ahead to inform them had clearly relayed everything that had happened. I took a deep breath, adjusted my attire, and stepped out of the sedan. Father, brother, I walked forward, my knees buckling as I prepared to kneel. A divorced woman returning home in Great Chi was a disgrace, and despite my clear conscience, I had to consider my family's honor. But before my knees touched the ground, a pair of calloused, steady hands caught my arms firmly. Why should you kneel? My daughter has been wronged, and she doesn't need to kneel to anyone. My father's voice was hoarse, but each word rang with conviction. The fury in his eyes softened when he saw my reddened eyes, traces of tears from my past life that had seeped into this one, appearing to outsiders as fresh grief, turning into boundless tenderness. Swear, did Tuoba Lai truly write you a divorce decree? My brother Liu Yingyun stepped forward, gritting his teeth, veins bulging on his forehead. What vows did he make before father when he asked for your hand? Now, for some cousin who appeared out of nowhere, he dares to treat you like this. Brother, the divorce decree is here. I took out the folded paper from my sleeve and handed it over with both hands. Father snatched it, read it with one glance, and his hands that had been trained for years in the official business of the state, began to tremble uncontrollably. He slapped the paper against his palm, uttering 3 good s in a row, making the servants lower their heads. Good. What a Prince Su. What a royal who places a concubine above his wife. He took a deep breath, gripping the decree tightly, then turned to look at the 500 chests stretching down the road. His eyes glinted with shrewdness and resolve. Unlike an ordinary father who might have wept, he recognized the critical opportunity here. Swear, you did the right thing. He turned to me, his tone carrying rare approval. If he's heartless, we can't lose our composure. By bringing back every single item of your dowry, we stand on solid legal ground. Today he divorced you for no reason, tomorrow at court. Let's see how he explains himself before His Majesty. Father, I also brought back the account books of the manor's daily expenses and purchases over the past 2 years. I lowered my gaze to hide the cold light in my eyes, and added softly, not a single needle or thread of mine was left behind. Steward Qin tried to stop us on the way. At this, my father and brother's expressions changed completely. He tried to withhold your private property. Brother Liu Yingyun let out a cold laugh. He's digging his own grave. Father, I'll help you draft the memorial tonight. Father patted my shoulder, his eyes gleaming with unprecedented ruthlessness. Swear, go inside and rest. Your father and brother will handle the storm ahead. The Liu family may not participate in factional struggles, but we're not soft enough to be trampled on. If Tuobalai wants the Ministry of Works support and a woman from the Bai family, he can't have it both ways. I curtsied obediently and, supported by Maji, walked toward the inner courtyard. As I turned, I saw my father had already called for the family's legal advisor, and they were speaking in hushed, serious tones in the main hall. In my past life, I had swallowed all my grievances, even urged my father not to impeach Tuobalai, fearing it would ruin his future. In the end, the entire Liu family was executed, and my father had ended his life with a white silk cord in prison. In this life, I would let the fire burn from the very beginning, right onto Tuobalai's own desk. Back in my maiden chambers, everything was as it had been, spotless and untouched. Clearly, my mother in her lifetime, and later my father, had kept it carefully maintained. I sat on the familiar carved wooden bed and let out a long, deep breath. "Miss, have some hot tea." Maji carried in a teacup, studying my expression, hesitant to speak. "If you have something to say, say it. There's no one else here." I took the tea and took a sip. "Your servant just doesn't understand. You brought back all those things, but why did you also take the indentures of the manor's servants?" Maji asked, puzzled. "They were either born into the manor or bought by the prince. Won't they just be idle mouths to feed?" I set down the teacup and looked at the sun beginning to set outside the window, a knowing smile playing on my lips. Idle mouths. Maji, remember this, without those servants who know every corner of the manor, that high and mighty Lady Bai will soon learn what it means to be unable to take a single step. Just then, a servant rushed in with urgent news. There was chaos at the Sioux Prince's manor. The servant, breathless, bowed and reported, "Miss, the scout we sent to the Sioux Prince's manor reports that the whole place is in an uproar." Lady Bai had just happily moved into the main chamber with her maids, but when she opened the storehouse, it was completely empty. Not even a mouse could find a scrap. In the afternoon, she wanted to order a meal, but the kitchen staff, the vegetable cutters, even the water carriers, every one of them had taken their indentures and followed our procession. Lady Bai is crying in her room, and Prince Su smashed 2 teacups and is scouring the streets for a restaurant that can cater a proper meal. I took a sip of tea, leisurely blowing away the floating leaves, a smile not reaching my eyes. Let them rage. I set the cup down, my expression calm. Bai Yaoguang prides herself on being from a refined, cultured family and scoffs at money. Let's see how she maintains her aristocratic airs in this expensive capital without those vulgar coins. Maji, come with me to the main hall. I believe father and brother have already reached their conclusions. When I reached the front hall, I saw the table piled high with official documents. Father, gripping his writing brush, was putting the finishing touches on a sharply worded memorial. "Father, brother." I curtsied. Father looked up, his stern expression softening at the sight of me. He set down his brush and said gravely, "Schwer, the memorial is ready. I've served in the Ministry of Works for 20 years. I've stayed out of the prince's infighting, but I'm no coward who'll let my daughter be humiliated. This memorial impeaches Prince Su for divorcing his wife without cause, elevating a concubine over his principal wife, and embezzling private property. Tomorrow at court, the Minister of Works and several censors will jointly submit it. Great Qi values ritual law, but the actions of the imperial family set an example. If Tuobalai had divorced you properly, the censorate might have overlooked it, but he threw a divorce decree in the face of the Minister of Works' legitimate daughter, and then left the manor unable to pay its own bills. That's a loss of royal dignity. Father's concern for me is deeply moving." I bowed my head, speaking sincerely. "But once this memorial is submitted, His Majesty will surely send an investigator to the Sioux Prince's manor. If Tuobalai insists that I was willful and arrogant and stripped the manor myself, His Majesty might blame both sides equally." My brother Liu Yun laughed coldly, hand on his sword, and stepped forward. "He wishes. Schwer, don't worry. When you moved your dowry out, the whole city was watching. Every single item's original inventory is registered with the authorities. On top of that, Father has compiled all the records of funds the Sioux Prince's manor drew from the Liu family's businesses over the past 2 years, used for luxury purchases and social maneuvering. This isn't something that can be brushed aside lightly. This is Tuobalai bleeding the Liu family dry through marriage. Hearing this, the last of my worries vanished. In my past life, I had hidden everything, afraid that exposing the truth would harm Tuobalai's standing with the emperor. I never realized that my compliance had only fed his greed, and ultimately gave him the ammunition to accuse my family of corruption and conspiracy. In this life, I would be the one to strip that mask away first. Since father and brother are so well prepared, I can rest easy. I looked up at my father, my gaze clear and resolute. Father, regarding the Ministry of Works construction and irrigation matters, some of those trade routes should be closely watched. Prince Su has been privately cultivating connections with several senior officials there. In the past, for my sake, some of those accounts were overlooked. Now, they must be thoroughly investigated. Father, with his years of experience, understood the weight of my words. He looked at me with a hint of surprise, as if he hadn't expected his daughter, once so absorbed in romance, to have such insight into the workings of the court, factions, and finances. Schwer, rest assured, I understand. Father nodded, a gleam of approval in his eyes, and waved his sleeve. It's getting late. Go to your courtyard and rest. After tomorrow's court session, the winds in the capital will change. Indeed, the next morning, before the court session had even ended, the capital was already buzzing with rumors. Servants from the Minister of Works mansion reported back from the West Gate that the censors of the Ministry of Works, along with 3 other officials, had taken turns impeaching Prince Su. Not only was the divorce decree, bearing his personal seal, presented, but also the detailed accounts of how the Su prince's manor had run up massive debts due to extravagance, forcing it to rely on the Minister of Works' personal funds to stay afloat. It was said that the emperor was furious, and threw the ledgers into Obalai's face, accusing him of mismanaging his household, indulging his desires, and bringing shame to the imperial family. When I heard Maji's vivid account, I was trimming a geranium on the windowsill with small scissors. Miss, you should have seen it. The scout said Prince Su's face was as green as a cooking pot when he left court, and as soon as he passed the noon gate, he was detained by officials from the imperial clan court to audit the manor's accounts and personnel records. Maji handed me a warm towel, grinning with schadenfreude. I wiped the plant sap from my fingers and smiled faintly. If the imperial clan court gets involved, that's when the real drama begins. Bai Yaoguang probably can't even put together a proper welcome banquet right now. Indeed. Maji lowered her voice conspiratorially. I heard that last night. Lady Bai, trying to keep up appearances, sent her 2 maids to a restaurant to order a feast. But the restaurant, hearing it was the Su prince's manor, demanded cash, apparently. Their tab had been unpaid for 3 months. Lady Bai couldn't produce that much silver and had to pawn a gold hairpin to settle the bill. It's all over the east side of town. Hearing these small but fatal details, I felt no emotion. Bai Yaoguang had always prided herself on being above petty concerns, hating being seen as stingy. In my past life, I had shielded her from all the ugliness, letting her paint and play music in the back courtyard, earning a reputation for purity. Without me as a buffer, those delicate hands that never touched rough work would soon be burned by the harsh reality of daily survival. But I knew Tuobalai's nature, proud and paranoid. He wouldn't accept defeat. Losing face at court and being investigated by the imperial clan court had cut off any chance of advancement. His immediate priority was to appease the emperor and find new funds to keep himself afloat. As expected, as dusk fell, the gatekeeper rushed into the inner courtyard. Miss, the Su prince's manor's carriage is at our side gate. Prince Su, in civilian clothes with 2 attendants, says he must see you. Before the gatekeeper finished, Maji's eyebrows shot up in anger. He has the nerve to come here. He writes you a divorce decree yesterday, and after today's humiliation at court, he remembers our young lady's worth. Miss, I say we have the guards chase him off with sticks. Keep him from dirtying our doorstep. Chase him off. I rose from before the bronze mirror, smoothing the folds of my gown, a faint smile playing on my lips. If we send him away too harshly, it'll make me look guilty and give him an excuse to say the Minister of Works is arrogant and rude. Since the prince came himself, I should see him. I walked to the side hall adjacent to the gate with Maji. Through a screen of polychrome glass, I saw Tuoba lie standing with his hands behind his back. He had changed into a plain stone blue robe, not as bright as his usual attire, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Clearly he hadn't slept since yesterday. Your Highness, what brings you here? I did not step around the screen, but spoke coolly through the shimmering glass. Tuoba Lai stiffened and turned abruptly. He couldn't see my face clearly, only a vague silhouette through the screen, but his tone carried an unfamiliar hint of humility. Ing Xue, must you be so distant? Today, your father and brother colluded with the censorate to frame me, humiliating me before His Majesty and even involving the imperial clan court. Is this the Liu family's idea of good breeding? I found his accusations absurd. In my past life, he had been the same. Whenever something went wrong, he blamed others for not being understanding enough. I stepped forward, fingers resting on the sandalwood frame of the screen. My tone restrained but each word sharp. Your Highness jests. That divorce decree was written and sealed by you. The items I took were all clearly my family's property, accumulated over 30 years. As for the debts of the manor, the imperial clan court is investigating that. Your Highness knows best whether it's a frame-up. Tuoba Lai choked on his words, then brushed his sleeve dramatically and softened his tone. I was angry yesterday. Yao Guang is alone in the capital, with no family to turn to. If I didn't give her a title, she would have no choice but to end her life. I thought I'd write the divorce decree to preserve her reputation, and then after some time, when the dust settled, I'd bring you back as a secondary consort. You've always been sensible. Why have you made such a scene? Telling the whole city, make me a secondary consort. I laughed, but the laughter was soaked in the absurdity of 2 lifetimes. Your Highness flatters me. I may not be royalty, but I am the legitimate daughter of the Minister of Works, raised to be a principal wife. Since your Highness wishes to uphold Lady Bai's honor, let her be your helpmate. I willingly vacated the position of principal consort, and I have no intention of returning as a concubine. You. Tuoba Lai's face flushed red with anger and shame. His visit wasn't about reconciliation, it was about money and servants. The imperial clan court's audit had found less than 200 taels of silver in the manor's accounts, not enough to pay next month's expenses, and by Yao Guang, having driven away the kitchen staff and the bookkeepers, couldn't even get a proper meal. Ing Xue, we were married for years. I don't believe you've no feelings for me. Tuoba Lai swallowed his pride, lowering his voice. The manor is in chaos, and Yao Guang is inexperienced. Name your price. What will it take for you to send those managers and servants back? I can let you keep half of your 500 chests here at the Minister of Works mansion, as a filial gift. Hearing those words, even Maji behind me trembled with rage. But I only grew more clear-headed. In my past life, she had used that same condescending tone, coaxing me with sweet words while carting off my dowry to fill her bottomless pit. Your Highness, I believe you've forgotten that those account books and indentures are now under the watchful eyes of the Imperial Clan Court and the Ministry of Revenue. I lowered my gaze, speaking slowly. The servants left because they saw the manor was going nowhere and didn't want to drag down Lady Bai's refined reputation. And as for my dowry, not half, not even a shred of it, now that it's back in the Liu family, will ever leave again. If your Highness is truly in need, why not have Lady Bai contribute her own family's assets to prove your devotion? This struck at Tuoba Lai's weakest point. The Bai family had fallen into poverty long ago, and Bai Yao Guang had arrived with only 2 bundles of clothes, with no private wealth of her own. Lu Yingxue, are you truly so heartless? He finally dropped all pretense, his gaze venomous. Without me, you're nothing but a discarded woman. What high-ranking family in the capital would marry a divorcee? You'll see. Without the Prince Su's manor, you'll be helpless. Then don't trouble yourself. Your Highness. I turned and signaled to Maji. See the guest out. If Prince Su comes again, refuse him outright. This humble household of the Minister of Works cannot accommodate such a distinguished visitor. Lu Yingxue, Tuoba Lai roared from beyond the screen. But the only answer he received was Maji's chilly invitation to leave. He stormed out, his departure utterly undignified. Standing in the side hall, listening to the carriage depart, I let out a long breath. This was only the beginning. Without the Liu family's financial backing, his ambitions at court would soon begin to crumble. And indeed, 3 days later, news came from the Ministry of Works. The accounts for the Jiangnan irrigation projects, long controlled by Prince Su's faction, had been found to have enormous deficits. Father presented the records directly to the emperor, cutting off Tuoba Lai's access to the funds he had been secretly draining from the ministry to bribe officials and support his private forces. This single move starved him of his resources. The Ministry of Works' presentation of the Jiangnan irrigation accounts caused an uproar at court. The emperor dispatched the Ministry of Revenue and the Supreme Court to investigate jointly. Within days, they discovered several cases where tens of thousands of taels of silver had been funneled, through convoluted channels, into several secret shops owned by the Su prince's manor. This was money Tuoba Lai had intended to use to court military leaders in the northwest. With the route cut off, the funds frozen, the connections he had painstakingly built in the military began to fray as promised wages failed to arrive. But the turmoil at court was matched by turmoil within the prince's manor. Miss. News from the pharmacy on the street next to the Su prince's manor, Maji said, setting down a bowl of chilled mung bean and lily soup before me. Lowering her voice, one of Bai Yaoguang's most trusted maids slipped out the back door yesterday, pawned a jade hairpin, and bought some dubious medicine. I set down my ledger, my fingers brushing the rim of the bowl, and gave a faint smile. Oh, dubious medicine. Instead of calling the imperial physician, she goes to a private apothecary. What kind of medicine? The doctor's prescription was for stabilizing a pregnancy. Maji pursed her lips, disdain plain in her eyes. But if you count the days, she's only been in the manor a short while. If this is true, it'll be the biggest joke in the capital. Adultery is a crime punishable by drowning in a pig cage under Great Qi law. Leaning back against my pillow, I smiled coldly. In my past life, Bai Yaoguang had been a master of using delicate health to compete for favor. Whenever Tuoba Lai stayed in my room, she would suddenly have chest pains or dizzy spells, luring him away, and their affair had begun far earlier than anyone knew. But in my past life, I, the legitimate wife, had been there to shield her, allowing her to secretly treat her condition under my name, and later pass off the child as premature. In this life, I had divorced early and taken away all her cover. If she wanted this child to survive, she would have to bring this scandal into the open, under the scrutiny of the imperial clan court and the emperor's investigation. She won't hide it, I said, stirring the soup slowly. Bai Yaoguang has always been proud. What she fears most is fading into obscurity without a title. With Tuoba Lai's political setbacks and empty coffers, if she doesn't use this baby to force him to make her his principal consort, she'll be dragged down with him to his desolate fief. Leak this news to the matrons from the imperial clan court still auditing the manor's accounts. Understood, miss. I'll make sure it's done cleanly. Maji answered promptly and withdrew. Inside the Su prince's manor, the days of lavish feasts and music were long gone. Tuoba Lai returned from court one day, and as he entered the courtyard, he heard the sharp crack of porcelain being smashed in the main chamber. He was already seething from his humiliation at court, losing the Ministry of Works' support, being publicly berated by his father. Hearing this only darkened his expression further. What now? Haven't I lost enough face? He kicked open the door, bellowing. Inside, Bai Yaoguang sat at her dressing table, weeping. The floor was littered with cheap ceramic shards. When she saw Tuoba Lai, instead of greeting him with her usual tender smile, she cried even harder, clutching her handkerchief. Your Highness, this life is unbearable. I asked the kitchen to make a bird's nest soup, and the steward said there wasn't a single piece in the storeroom. He said we'd have to pay cash at the pharmacy. I'm the mistress of the manor, and I can't even have a bowl of bird's nest without begging the servants. Tuoba Lai's temples throbbed. He had poured all his liquid assets into plugging the holes in the Northwestern Military Fund, and now he was barely scraping by. If there's no bird's nest, eat plain porridge. Ying Xue never made such a fuss over food. He threw himself into a chair and took a sip of cold tea, but the bitter taste made him scowl. This tea is stale. Where has all the money gone? Hearing him bring up my name, Bai Yaoguang clenched her teeth, jealousy flashing in her eyes. So now your highness prefers sister's competence. She took 500 chests of dowry and not even a needle was left for the manor. She's trying to starve us out. If you think she's so wonderful, why not kneel at the Minister of Works mansion and beg her to come back, instead of taking your anger out on me? Outrageous. Tuobalai slammed the table. I am a prince of the blood. I will not bow to a discarded woman. Then just let me and my child starve. Bai Yaoguang sobbed, rising as if to throw herself against the wall. At the word, child, Tuobalai started, lunging forward to catch her. What did you say? You're pregnant. Bai Yaoguang fell into his arms, weeping like a flower in the rain. 2 months now. Your Highness, I was going to wait until things settled down to tell you. But the manor is in such a state, this child will be born without even a drop of proper milk. What's the point of my living? Tuobalai looked at her delicate face, and his shock slowly turned into delight. But then a deeper chill set in. 2 months. That meant they had been together before he divorced his wife. Great Qi law was strict. For a prince to get another woman with child before the divorce was a crime that could see him reduced to commoner status. Before he could think of a way to cover this up, a stern cough came from the courtyard. Senior Matron Li, sent by the imperial clan court to audit the accounts, was standing at the door of the main chamber, her cold, experienced face a mask of severity. Her sudden appearance froze the air in the room. Tuobalai instinctively shielded by Yaoguang behind him, his face pale, forcing out a stiff smile. Matron Li, what brings you to the inner courtyard? How is the audit progressing? Matron Li was a veteran of the palace, having weathered countless storms. She fixed her cold eyes on Bai Yaoguang's still flat belly, and her voice was like chips of ice. Your servant is here on orders from His Majesty and the Imperial Clan Court to audit the debts of the Su Prince's manor. I thought it was merely a case of poor household management, but now I hear something truly shocking. Lady Bai says she is 2 months pregnant. Bai Yaoguang's face went white as she clung to Tuobalai's sleeve, her sobs dying in her throat. You must have misheard. Matron, Yaoguang is just unwell, she's speaking nonsense. Tuobalai tried to cover up, sweat beading on his forehead. Matron's ears may be old, but I dare not mishear matters of imperial blood. Matron Li gave him no face at all, bowing slightly, her tone implacable. Your Highness, the law of Great Qi states that a concubine cannot be brought in while the wife is in the household, let alone an unnamed pregnancy. Miss Lu left only 2 days ago, and rumors are still swirling outside. If His Majesty were to learn that Lady Bai was already with child before she even entered your gates, do you think the Imperial Clan Court's records will still bear your name? Tuobalai was thunderstruck. He knew his father hated misbehavior in his sons. If the scandal of illegitimate pregnancy reached the throne, he would lose not just any chance at succession, but possibly even his title and freedom. Matron, I am the one at fault. Yaoguang is innocent. Tuobalai gritted his teeth, pulling a fine white jade pendant from his sleeve, trying to press it into Matron Li's hands. Please put in a good word for me before the Imperial Clan Court and His Majesty. Once things settle down, I will surely thank you generously. Matron Li stepped back, her hands tucked in her sleeves, her expression hardening. You do me too much honor. Your Highness, I merely report the truth. How His Majesty chooses to act is his prerogative. Have the sedan brought. Return to the palace. With that, she swept her sleeve and left with her attendants, giving Tuobalai no room to negotiate. Watching them go, Tuobalai collapsed into his chair, his eyes full of despair. He turned to look at Bai Yaoguang, who was still crying, and for the first time, a wave of uncontrollable frustration and disgust washed over him. If he hadn't brought her in, he wouldn't have written that divorce decree. If Lu Yingxue were still here, with the Lu family's wealth and skills, how could a palace matron have bullied him in his own home? How could he be short of bird's nest and fresh tea? Your Highness, what are we going to do now? Bai Yaoguang crept forward, reaching for his hand. Get away. Tuobalai shoved her hard, knocking her to the ground, his eyes terrifyingly dark. This is all your fault. If you hadn't pushed me to give you a title, I wouldn't be in this mess. Get out. Bai Yaoguang sat on the floor, staring in disbelief at the man who had once doted on her, her tears finally breaking through. At the Minister of Work's mansion, I sat in my new rosewood chair, listening to Maji's latest reports from the palace and the manor. Miss, justice does prevail. Maji beamed, her eyes crinkling like crescent moons. After Matron Li returned to the palace and reported to the emperor, His Majesty was furious. He immediately downgraded Prince Su to a county prince, docked him 3 years' salary, and ordered him confined to his residence. As for Lady Bai, His Majesty said her conduct was improper. She wasn't even given the title of a secondary consort, merely allowed to remain as a commoner to carry the child, not even permitted entry into the clan records. I listened quietly, a smile of anticipation on my lips. Downgraded from prince to county prince, his salary cut and confined. Tuoba Lai's chances of succession were dead. Bai Yaoguang, who had always prided herself on her purity, now didn't even have the status of a proper concubine. She was nothing more than a nameless commoner. For her, that was worse than death. But I knew Tuoba Lai wouldn't accept this fate. Without money and stripped of his title, the only way he could recover was to win me back. Miss, just as you predicted, someone from the Su Prince's manor has come again. The gatekeeper reported respectfully from behind the curtain. But this time, it's not a steward, it's the county prince himself. He came in a sedan chair, and at the front gate of the Minister of Work's mansion. He says he wants to make a formal apology to you and your father. A formal apology. I rose slowly, smoothing the embroidery on my sleeve, my eyes cold. He's truly willing to throw away all his royal pride. Let's go see just how low our county prince can stoop. When I reached the main gate, the street was already thronged with curious onlookers. Tuoba Lai had removed his ornate robes, wearing only plain white clothes, standing pale and gaunt at the bottom of the steps. Behind him, 2 attendants carried a flimsy coffin. When he saw me, his once arrogant eyes tried to project deep affection and regret. Ying Xue, you finally agreed to see me. He stepped forward, reaching for my hand. I sidestepped, retreating behind the threshold of the Minister of Work's mansion, looking down at him from the steps. My tone was polite but distant. County Prince, please conduct yourself with dignity. I am now a commoner, unworthy of such a grand gesture. What brings you to the gate of the Minister of Work's mansion? The words, County Prince, made Tuoba Lai's face twitch, a sharp pain in his palm from his nails, stifling his humiliation. He lowered his voice and pleaded, Ying Xue, I was wrong, utterly wrong. I was misled by others, and in a moment of confusion, I hurt you. I tore up that divorce decree in public. In my heart, you are the only true princess of the Su Prince's manor. Come back with me, please. If you agree, I'll confine Bai Yaoguang immediately, and you'll have full control over the household. The crowd murmured. Some, not knowing the full story, even whispered in support, thinking a prince's show of humility was a grand gesture. But I found his performance nauseating. In my past life, he had done the same, sweet words and groveling when he needed the Liu family's help, and ruthless betrayal the moment he gained power. Come back. I laughed coldly, my voice clear enough for everyone to hear. County Prince, you jest. That divorce decree is a matter of record with the Imperial Clan Court. It cannot be undone by a mere statement. Besides, Lady Bai carries a child of royal blood. If I were to return now, wouldn't I become a villain, seen as breaking apart a loving couple and harming an innocent child? That child was a mistake. I don't care about it at all. Tuoba Lai said desperately. To win me back, he was ready to cast aside his beloved Bai Yaoguang and his own flesh and blood. If it pleases you, I'll send the child away the moment it's born. It won't be a bother. This, I thought, is his idea of true love? Enough. County Prince. I took a step back, and the servants of the Minister of Work's mansion moved forward with thick wooden poles to keep him at a distance. I am living very well at the Minister of Work's mansion. My 500 chests of dowry are enough to see me through a comfortable life. As for the hardships and distractions of your manor, I leave them for you and Lady Bai to savor. Servants, see the guest out. Close the gates. Lu Yingxue, are you truly going to let me die? Tuoba Lai, seeing that pleasant words were useless, finally showed his true colors, clutching the gate and hissing, "Without me, you're nothing but a discarded flower." The heavy gate slammed shut, cutting off his curses completely. Standing within, listening to the crowd's accusations and jeers, I felt a calm clarity. He had nowhere left to turn. What awaited him now was truly the end. The heavy doors of the Minister of Works mansion sealed away Tuoba Lai's final frenzy. The noise from outside faded. I stood in the courtyard, looking up at the square of sky above, and the resentment that had weighed on my heart for decades finally lifted. The spectacle of a county prince making a scene at the mansion gates became the talk of the city. The emperor, hearing of it, was deeply disappointed and issued a secret decree ordering Tuoba Lai to leave immediately for his fief, forbidden to return without permission. On the eve of his departure, the Sioux County Prince's manor faced its final destruction. Chaos erupted at the manor last night. Maji hurried in, unable to hide her shock and satisfaction. Bai Yaoguang lost the baby. It seems she couldn't bear the hardship and secretly tried to sell a gift the prince had given her, but was conned and reported. When Tuoba Lai found out, he flew into a rage, and in the ensuing struggle, Bai Yaoguang hit a table corner. I was trimming bamboo shoots with a small silver scissors. At these words, my hands didn't pause, and I only gave a faint acknowledgement. She always prided herself on her cleverness, but without power and protection, she had no idea how cruel the underworld can be. Bai Yaoguang lost her child and gained a criminal charge for selling imperial property. To protect himself, Tuoba Lai had her sent to a nunnery outside the city with only a straw mat left to fend for herself. He himself slipped out of the capital that night, with a few remaining servants, to his desolate fief. Without the Liu family's fortune and political connections, his life would be nothing but a slow decline. Half a month later, the Jiangnan irrigation project was completed. Father was publicly honored by the emperor for his supervision and for exposing the corruption. Rewards poured into the Minister of Works mansion. My brother Liu Yingyun was also promoted for his achievements in the city guard. The mansion was decorated with lanterns and banners. I wore a light crimson brocade jacket, my hair done up in a neat jeweled knot, sitting in the main hall watching the accountants tally the new profits from Jiangnan. The 500 chests of dowry were not only intact, but had multiplied under my management. All the major families of the capital have been calling at our door, hoping to propose marriage on your behalf, Maji said while fanning me. Teasingly, those who once sneered at your divorce are now looking at your wealth and your father's influence with hungry eyes. I looked at the clear figures in the ledger, smiled slightly, and closed it. Marriage is but a garnish. Marry the wrong person, and you lose everything. Now I have fortune, a healthy family, and my own independence. Why would I choose to suffer behind the walls of some rich household? Just then, father and brother walked into the main hall, laughing. Seeing my calm, self-assured demeanor, father's face was full of pride and relief. Swear, His Majesty mentioned you today at court. Father sat down, took up his teacup, and spoke with unusual ease. He said you are a lucky one, avoiding the mire, resolute and decisive. My greatest pride in this life is having such a clear-headed daughter. It is only because of my father's love that I have such strength. I rose to curtsy, my words humble, but my gaze firm. In my past life, I had dragged my entire family into ruin for the sake of love and an empty title, dying alone in a cold palace. In this life, I had used a divorce decree as the opening move, taking back what was mine and protecting the Liu family's honor. Now, I sit in a position of power, controlling vast wealth, watching those who once harmed me fall into the dust. This glorious world is ultimately mine to command. What do you think of this story? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I look forward to hearing your voice.